Welcome everyone to People on Dating. I'm your host Will Morales, and for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this podcast is about the ups and downs of dating and how to navigate through it. Today, my guest is Wesley Toma. Wesley is a master certified relationship and intimacy coach and sex educator with over 10 years of experience coaching and advocating for the LGBTQIA plus and the kink communities. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get here? What was your journey like to become a coach, to talk about the LGBTQI plus, if I got that right? Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So as I said, my name is Wesley Toma. I am a relationship and intimacy coach. I focus mostly on the LGBTQIA plus.
IA plus, yeah, I forgot that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And as well as the kink communities, which are two very, very secluded, communities that I feel that they don't get enough attention. So I got here because I am both part of the queer community as well as a kinkster. So I know both communities very well. I've always liked helping people and growing up and wanting to, doing some sort of like a coaching thing.
Yeah.
And it just kind of fell into place, and then I think 12 years ago, I met my husband and he kind of helped me learn what it meant to be in a relationship and what a relationship actually looked like. Yeah. And from there, I just kind of wanted to show other people that you can have fun and you can be different and it's okay. And there's nothing wrong.
No, I definitely agree. For me, when I did this podcast, it was open to everybody. I wanted people to be on the show to talk about their relationships because, as you know, Wesley, all of us at one point or another has dated someone, and I think it's important to get our message out there, whether it's straight, gay, kinky, whatever it is. We all have a story to tell. So, Wesley, for you, when you were growing up and you got into when you got into your sexual experience and all that. Has things changed from the time you were young to now? I don't know how old are you, and if you want to say great, I'm 60, and I see that it's a different world out there. It's more of a hookup community than a relationship. Am I in the ballpark?
You are. For the record, I'm 43, so I'm
you can pass for 33.
Thank you. So I've been around. I remember when I was younger, it was dangerous to be out and proud, gay man. And it was, to be a kinkster, forget it. That was unheard of. So yeah, I mean, it has changed drastically. I think it's changed for the better. For the most part, I mean, I know we have our ups and downs, but I think for the most part, it's changed for the better. I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. I think there's still a lot of change that needs to be done. But it is leaps and bounds better. And, in terms of dating, I have a kind of a nice insight on that because, me and my husband, we recently just went poly. So we've opened our relationship up. So I've been in the dating scene and it's just as bad as I remembered in my 20s. And people are there. You're right. There's in my profiles, I say I want meaningful connections. I want to talk to people. I want to get to know you. But most people don't read the profile and they just want to hook up. They just, when can I come over?
For instance, on Instagram, I get these women sending me messages, and I know most of the time, Wesley, it's probably I'm being ghosted because I always ask the first thing is, do you talk on the phone? Do you do Zoom, or you prefer texting? I even give them the out by saying, do you prefer texting? 9 out of 10 times is always texting. So I know it's a ghost, I know it's not the real person because most of the time it's their profiles in a bikini, or you see the bra, or they're bending over. And I'm like, come on. I mean, you got to see through this. So, and I did an episode about that because to warn guys, this is catfishing. Do not fall for this because they're calling you babe, honey, I love you within 30 seconds of a text. I'm like, what the hell's happened out here?
Yep.
So Talk more about the kink community, because
Sure.
because I don't know what that means. If you could talk more about it, because this is all new to me, and I'm so happy to have you on, and I really appreciate you reaching out. And
Yeah.
when I saw your profile, I'm like, yes, I definitely want to have Wesley on. So if you could talk more about that, and
Sure.
so my audience can know, and let's get the whole world to know.
Absolutely. Because I am all about normalizing sex, because I think it's a thing to be done. Also, for the record, even in the gay community, there's still catfish. I get catfished at least twice a week, so it's not any better.
Okay.
Um,
Thanks for clarifying that. At least that made me feel somewhat better.
yeah. Yeah, I know what I look like, and I know these guys that are catfishing me. I'm like, I'm realistic. I'm not good enough looking for them, but that's okay. Anyways, so
I say the same thing when I see some of these women. I'm like, give me a break. You know what I mean?
yeah. So kink, basically, the basic idea of kink is, if you want to look at a definition of it, it's using an external source to gain pleasure. That pleasure doesn't necessarily mean sexual pleasure. It just means pleasure. So, I know a lot of kinksters that are into kinks that don't climax at the end. They don't have sexual pleasure from it. They just enjoy doing it. It brings them joy. It brings them happiness. That's what kink is. There's always this kind of confusion between what a kink and a fetish is. And it's one of those things that everyone has a different variation. Some people say kinks don't have to be sexual. Some people say fetish does have to be sexual. I disagree. I think that you can have a non-sexual fetish. To me, the difference between like a kink and a fetish is a spectrum from want to need. A kink is something you want, and a fetish is something you need to get that pleasure. So you can have someone who has a car fetish that needs to have a really nice car. To me, that's still a fetish, even though they're not getting off on it. That's still a fetish. So it's basically using some sort of external source other than you or your partner or whatever to gain that pleasure. So what's funny is most people don't realize this. If you've ever used a sex toy, that's a kink.
You read my mind. I was going to ask you if you bring a toy into a relationship, maybe 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever that may be. You bring a toy, or you talk to your partner and say, hey, how about this vibrator, or, whatever. So that's considered kink?
A kink. Yeah,
Wow,
you're
because
using
it's
an external source
external.
to gain pleasure.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
I mean, I wouldn't say
yeah.
start going to kink conferences and getting into whip and chains.
Yeah.
But accept that you have a little bit of a kinky side.
Yeah. I think well, and you tell me, Wesley, because would it be harder for a new relationship to bring in such an external type of pleasure, or would you suggest maybe wait 30, 60, 90 days? Again, I guess it depends on the conversation you can have with your partner.
I think that second point you made is right on. It's all about the conversation. One thing that I've learned in the kink community, which is something I'm also trying to promote in the what I call the vanilla world, is conversation and negotiation are important whenever you have a kink. So when you're negotiating, when you're talking about a kink scene, for example, like if I'm talking about doing a whipping scene with someone, as an example, we're going to have a conversation about what is and is not allowed. We're going to have a conversation about how far we can go, what's the level, what we're going to do. And we're also going to talk about, because it's kink and you need it, we're going to talk about safe words or ways to say when we're going to stop or when we've had enough. And not just these things aren't necessarily things that you need to talk about in any conversation, but to me, anytime you have a sexual relationship or anytime you have an intimate relationship, not even sexual, just an intimate relationship with a second person, that could be a scene. That's some sort of scene that you're doing. It's the same as a kink scene, it's just less toys. So communication is vital. Communication is important. Negotiation is important. And obviously, it should go without saying, but unfortunately it doesn't. Consent is 100% important. So if you like toys, just talk to your partner. I don't think it's like, I don't want to think it's like a new job. You get like the 90 days and then you get your benefits. I think it's, if that's something you like to do, bring it up. Like, hey, just so you know, I have these toys. I kind of like to play with them. What are your thoughts? How do you feel about that? And then kind of gauge from there. If they're into it, great. If they're not, great. You know, that that relationship works the way it wants to. But you
So,
definitely want to talk about it.
no, and you hit it right on the head. It's definitely about communication. Talk more about the negotiating part.
Sure.
Because it's the first time I ever heard it that way, the way you put it. So talk more about negotiating. Now, when we're talking about with our partner, are we talking about, like you said, the kink side of it or the erotic side of it? What would be the meaning of when we talk about negotiation? Did my
So
question make any sense
negotiation,
at all?
it did. It did. Yeah. So negotiation is usually done in any form of kink scene, any kind of kink act. And for those who may not know, when I say kink scene, it's anytime you're doing any kind of play that involves kink or some sort of kink act. You know, so if you're tying up your partner and spanking them, that's a kink scene. You know, if you're playing with other thing, rope and stuff, that's a kink scene. So that's what I mean by scene.
Handcuffs
When
and
you
things like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And the scene starts when you say it starts, and it ends when you say it ends. And these are things you're going to discuss ahead of time. So as unsexy as it is, I will sit down with any partners I have before I even go into the bedroom. I'll sit on the couch, we'll have a conversation, and I'll say, what do you like to do? What is off limits? And how do we want to negotiate or navigate around these things? And so we discuss it. And the reason it's vitally important in kink is because there's a lot of kinks out there that are, quite frankly, very dangerous. And if not done very well, you could get hurt if you don't know what you're doing. If you tie someone up wrong, you can cut off circulation, and that could hurt, that could damage them. There's kinks that involve blades and needles, and if those aren't done right, you can get in a lot of trouble, because it can be very dangerous. So these are why you need to negotiate these things, and you need to make sure that, and the reason you negotiate is because you also want to have comfort and trust, because without it, you can't get into the scene, and then two, if I'm doing a scene with somebody, again, as an example, the way they're whipping me, if I don't know them,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're gonna know when to stop, if they're gonna know how hard to go, or if they're gonna even listen to me if I say for it out. So this is why the negotiation is important, because you kind of talk about this stuff. These are the limits. These are the things that are good. These are the absolute no-goes. And this is how we're gonna start it here. We're gonna do it here. And something that a lot of people don't think about or don't realize for negotiation. I'm sorry, this is a very long-winded answer.
No, please.
Yeah, but one thing that you need to keep remembering is you never negotiate up, always negotiate down. What that means is you negotiate before the scene. If you want to change the dynamic of the scene during the scene, you only can negotiate down in the sense of lessening what you discussed, because when you're in scene, or when you're even in a sexual act, when you're intimate with your partner, brain chemicals happen, your body feels things differently, you go into a different mindset, and your body may not know it should not do the things it should not do, because you don't feel it, because your body, it gets all wonky and crazy, and your brain gets all wonky and crazy. So you never want to go into a scene and say, hey, this feels good, let's go harder, because you may get hurt and may not know it until after it's too late. But you should 100% feel comfortable saying, hey, this is too much, let's back off a little bit. So always negotiate down, never going to negotiate up.
Okay. Which is good to know. Does S&M, is that part of would that be considered part of the kink community? S&M, role playing, things like that. Because I mean, none of my friends ever admitted it, and I would never admit it that I would like to do a role play where I'm the plumber and my girlfriend is, the damsel in distress and all that.
Yep.
But does that come into play in any type of community, whether it's straight or gay, whatever it is, S&M on one scale, role play on another?
Yeah, and I mean, they're all parts of the kink community. S&M, sadomasochism,
Yeah.
Basically is, you know, you like pain or you like to inflict pain. That's basically what that means. That's part of kink, you know, the overall term is, you know, BDSM. And, you know, so it's important. And underneath the umbrella of kink is lots of different types of role play. I mean, there's whole communities based on different types of role play. You know, to name a couple, there's what's called caregiver little, where people kind of regress into a kind of a younger state of mind, where they kind of become almost like children, and they have somebody who takes care of them. And again, most of the time, these are not sexual. These are just things for people to get pleasure out of, you know, because some people like to regress into a younger age. It releases tension. It releases stress. They can pretend to be a kid for a little while and not think about the worries. Then there's stuff like pet play, where people pretend to be animals. Same thing. It doesn't have to be
I
sexual. It's
heard
just
that.
more
Yeah, I
about,
heard that
yeah,
before. Yeah.
it's more about the regression. And then there's stuff like you said, you know, where they, you know, hey, the cable got your cables out. I want to come in and use my big wrench to help fix your internet. You
Yeah.
know, that's role play. That's, you know, that's kink. And, you know, one thing I said it earlier, is that what I want to tell people, I try to tell people is, I guarantee at some point in your intimate life, whether it's sexual or not, you have experimented with a kink, because you've used a toy, you've probably done some sort of role play, you probably spanked the butt once in a while. These are all technically kink things. You know,
Yeah.
doesn't make you a kinkster, but these are kinky things.
You know, it's funny. You're right. Smacking the butt or whatever. I didn't even thought about it as being kinky. I just thought of it as part of the lovemaking process and all that. You had mentioned earlier that either that or I read it about you have a polyamorous now, a relationship.
Yep.
If you could dive into that a little bit more, what does that mean? Because I think my audience might not know what that means. I had to look it up.
Sure. Yeah. So polyamory, it's under the I keep using the term umbrella, but it's under the umbrella of what we call ethical non-monogamy.
Right.
What that means is you are choosing consensually with your partner to not be in a monogamous relationship. You know, so that's ethical to counter it, non-ethical non-monogamy would be cheating on your partner or your spouse.
Right.
And underneath that are different terms. There's open relationships, there's poly relationships. They're basically the same thing. And again, it depends on your definition. For me, the difference is, like, an open relationship is you have a primary partner and you're looking for play partners, you know, people to, you know, fool around with, you know, one night stands, no strings attached type of, just kind of get out in the world.
Right.
Where in a poly relationship, you want to have multiple partners with emotional connections. So, you know, you may have a primary part, like I have my primary husband, he is my primary partner, but I'm looking for one or two other guys that I can really connect with and kind of get on a deeper level, and I can really get to know and, you know, and have relationships with. So that, to me, that's really the difference.
Right. Okay. I definitely get that. Is it possible that uh with that type of relationship where you're looking for another type of emotional connection, that could lead to leaving your partner because now you connected more with, you know, partner B than your primary partner? Has that ever came into your, you know, into your coaching realm or even friends where, you know, now you're getting so emotional because you like this partner might bring maybe more stimulating conversation, or the sex could be really good? Is there a danger in this type of relationship?
I mean, there's always a chance of something
I
like
mean, it
that
could be
happening.
whether you're doing it or not. I mean, it could be
Right.
you're cheating on the, yeah. So I
Yeah.
get you.
I
Yeah,
mean, I think in any situation that, yes, to answer your question, yes, that could happen. I think the things you need to think about. So if you are somebody who is thinking about opening a relationship, or, you know, trying to go poly, the best advice I can give you is see a therapist with your partner, couples
yeah.
therapy.
Okay.
Even, and I'm not saying there's something wrong with you,
Right.
you know, because that's not, you're not seeing a therapist because the relationship needs help. You're seeing a therapist to make sure you're not going to ruin the relationship.
Oh,
We talked about opening our relationship for 9 years, 10 years before we opened it, and we didn't want to do it because we wanted to see a counselor before we started to make sure we were doing it right, because we didn't want to mess us up. So I would suggest, if you're going to think about it, consider seeing a counselor, while you're doing it, it gives you a chance. It also gives you someone to talk to, let some emotions out, kind of give you a way to share. The other thing is, and again, just like anything in kink, it's communication, communication, communication. You think you communicate with your monogamous partner now, you're going to communicate 10 times more when you open that relationship, because there's going to be a lot more to talk about, you know.
Wow. Yeah, I never
But
thought about that, but yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, that's all right. But what I've noticed, and it happened with us, and friends of mine who are also poly, that they've noticed, it has actually brought us closer as a couple than anything. You know, we had our concerns, like, what about jealousy? What about this? And we talk in therapy about, we fear that we're going to find someone better and they're going to leave us, and we both have that fear, but we
Right.
talk about it and we communicate to each other, and we're open and we're honest about our feelings. And as long as you do that, the chances of it going awry are slim and none. And also you also want to keep open the idea that if things start to get uncomfortable, if your partner wants to close it, you need to listen.
Right.
Don't then turn it into a non-ethical one where you're now cheating on your partner. If they want to close it and work on you, because in that situation, your partner is your most important thing, important person.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there. Um, and we're talking with Wesley Toma. Today's topic is sex and relationship. Um, in the communities that you cover and that you're part of, has um has it been more accepted now with the way the world is? Because it seems like when people do come out because they didn't want to come out before because they might ruin a family relationship or maybe their business or whatever. Have you seen more of both communities, the kink community and the LGBTQA plus? Did I get that right?
IA.
IA plus. Has it been more open than ever before? Have you seen more people like be more accepting?
I think when it comes to the LGBTQ, the queer community, we'll just make it easy. We'll just call it the queer community.
Okay.
um, when it comes to the queer community, I think people are more accepting. You see it, Hollywood, people are coming
Yeah,
out
yeah,
left and
yeah.
right in Hollywood, and it's okay. And there's no, you're not, people aren't, I mean, I can't say globally, but there less and less people are getting hurt, physically hurt, for being, out in public.
Yeah.
It has become safer. It's not perfect. There's still a lot of people that get murdered for coming out, but it's not like it used to be. Um, as far as the kink community, I think, because and not to get too political, but I think our world, as much as we separate church and state in this country, we are still they're still both very connected, and it's very connected globally. Religion kind of, unfortunately, does run a lot of large
Yeah.
um, governments and a lot of countries. So sex is never talked about in some countries, and it's shunned in others. And it's like, even in America, if when I talk to certain people about kink, I can see their faces they blush, and they kind of get uncomfortable, because you don't talk about that stuff in quote unquote normal society.
Are we still too conservative then as a country? I know we don't want to get
Yeah,
political, but I'm just saying in terms of
yeah,
that and that part of
absolutely.
sex and being open and
Yeah,
especially
I think we are.
whether yeah I think so too. I mean I see maybe some people are more open than others, but for most part I mean, conversations rarely get into anything about sex. I mean, I
No,
remember when I was younger, that's all we talked about. But as you get older, now
yeah,
it's like staying healthy and making it, waking up the next day and all that. But it's not like
right,
we're 100 or 95 years old. We're still young. But
exactly. Yeah, and
yeah, go
here's
ahead.
here's here's a good example. Right now, obviously, diversity, equity, inclusion is very, very big, which, as it should be.
Right.
In most large businesses, you look at a lot of these big companies, they will have a group for, like, pride group, or for the queer
Oh yeah.
community,
Yeah.
where they can get together, organize. So, like, Dell has it, Google has it, Amazon, they all have, like, their little pride groups inside, where you can identify as part of the community, and you guys can kind of, like, it's kind of like a social group.
Yeah.
You will never, and I guarantee you will never, find a kink community inside these these organizations, because if you start talking about kink and sex, you're going to HR and you're getting fired.
Yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, is it considered just too much of a taboo, even for, let's take the workplace out of it, just a normal conversation about, like you said, it's all about communication, but like, hey, do you like to get spanked, or do you mind if I handcuffed you, or whatever? Is that still taboo, in certain circles, or even if not in circles, but just amongst friends?
I think it partially, I know for me, as you can tell, I'm very comfortable talking about this, and
Sure,
I have no
sure.
problem opening up about this stuff. So for me, I surround myself with people who are also very comfortable. I will say, again, because I'm dating again and meeting new partners, sometimes when I have that conversation with them and they're not necessarily kinky, but they want to try kinky things. And when I start talking about, okay, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? I can see they kind of get a little bit, not, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but they get a little bit uptight because they're just not used to that conversation.
Right.
Me and my husband were hanging out with someone the other night, and he's like, this is the most open conversation I've had about kink ever in my life. He's like, this has been the best conversation I've ever had, because we talked and we sat and we negotiated and we discussed before we did anything. And it's like, and we talked about it like we were talking about our kids, like, like we were doing laundry,
Yeah.
okay, so you like that chain, okay, well, this is a nice collar, hey, try this collar, how about these shackles, whatever, it was just an everyday conversation. He's like, this was the most like open and acceptable conversation I've ever had about this. And that's how it should be for everybody.
Oh no, I definitely agree. I think like I said, in definitely in other countries, that I could, it's still third world to me, but at least here in the USA, I mean, my God, talk about it, and it's funny because I had interviewed a guest previously to you, and it's like uh it's such an uncomfortable conversation to have, to ask someone, and tell me what you think of this, where a man might ask a partner, hey, what do you like? And for me, as a man, I talked about this to a woman, just a friend of mine, and she was like, under the assumption that men should know, how to please a woman or whatever, or a partner. But Wesley, I mean, we can't read the other person's mind. There's some people. I remember I went out with a woman that didn't like for me to go down south on her. I didn't know that. I went, and she pushed me away even before I got there. So is it still just too uptight? I mean, to have that type of conversation, even though I know we just touched base on that, but I'm just saying in terms of reading each other, because it's like, what the hell, man? I can't read your mind.
Yeah, I will
Sorry,
tell
I went
you.
off on a tangent there.
No, that's fine. I will tell you, the only person I know how to please satisfactorily 100% is myself. Because I know my body well enough to know what it takes for me to get that pleasure. Now I can say I know my husband very well, but that's because we've been together for 12 years and we've gone through the ups and downs and trials and tribulations of getting there. Right. But I still will only say that I can 100% please myself because I know my body. I don't know your body. I don't know any other partner's body. That's why we need to talk about it. Like you said, you had a partner that didn't like oral, and you didn't know that. And, quote unquote, men should just know how to treat a woman. How would you know that? Yeah. If she didn't tell you, I don't like this, and yes, there are techniques that you can know that most, and I'm going to use the term most, on average, most women will like and will be good, or most men will like and will be good. But it's not 100%, depending on the person, those things could change, and those things can drastically change, right. And if you don't have that conversation ahead of time, you don't know that. So you're going to fall down that hole of accidentally doing something that's going to make them uncomfortable, make them not feel good, and frankly, pull them out of the mood. Even if it's for a moment, it's still going to pull them out of the mood, because now they got okay, stop. Nope. Let's not, don't do that. Okay. Now let's try to get back into it. You know what I mean? So it's,
you ruined the mood.
Why put yourself through that trouble? Yeah.
Yeah, just had the conversation first. I definitely agree, and learning something new about this. first of all, Wesley, I want to thank you so much for being on People on Dating. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it. Talk more about your website, talk about your coaching. Let's get into that a little bit.
sure. So the website is wesleytoma.com. You can, if you go there, you can learn all about me, what I do, about my coaching. You can book an appointment on the website. I do a discovery meeting with everybody, which is it's a free call, costs you nothing. You book it, we sit and we'll
Mhm.
talk, we see if we're a match. If we are, we go forward. If not, no one gets hurt, no money out of your pocket. Um, like I said, I focus on the queer and kink communities, but I don't only do those. I'm happy to work with people who are do not identify in those communities. I am I am ultimately a relationship and intimacy coach. That doesn't, so that, that means any relationships. And again, that doesn't even necessarily mean intimate relationships. A relationship is any communication or connection between two people.
Yeah.
So if that's something you want to work on, I'm happy to help you. I would love to be there for you. Please let me know.
All right, sounds good. And anything else you want to promote? Any books? Because you do have a few books in you, Wesley. You know that, right?
I do. I haven't written them yet. But no, but I am actually starting my own podcast with another coach, Lori Sweetman. We are they're another queer friendly coach. We're starting, it's called oh my goodness, I just blanked out. Oh yeah. These queer stories.
Okay.
And so and it's gonna be about, it's basically about, the queer community, kind of talking about what it's like to be gay, be trans, be queer in society. And we're also going to use our coaching styles to kind of talk about things you can to move around it and kind of help give advice. We'll have guests on that'll tell us their stories and stuff. So it's going to be good. So we should be, I don't know when this is going to come out, but that should be coming out by the end of, I believe, beginning of January.
Okay. Yeah. No. Definitely. Send me a link so this way I can put it
Mhm.
on the show notes.
Yeah.
Any last word you want to say? Any other statement? Please, the floor is yours.
The only thing I want to say is, if you're feeling uncomfortable about something that you like, if something feels good but feels wrong to you, it's not. There's nothing wrong. I guarantee you, whatever it is that you are dealing with, there are thousands of people out there that are also liking that same thing
Yeah.
and dealing with that same thing. And there's a community for you. Don't ever feel like just because you want things quote unquote weird, that you are weird. There's nothing wrong with having fun. There's nothing wrong with exploring. And once we understand that as a community, then I think things will be a much better and more comfortable place.
I definitely agree. Well, again, Wesley, I want to thank you so much for being on People on Dating.
Mhm.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you.
All right. Bye bye.